The crack of gunfire on a training range might sound controlled, contained. But consider this. The knowledge imparted there. Well, it carries a weight that can extend far beyond the target.
Mhm.
What happens when the skills taught are applied or maybe misapplied out in the real world?
Right.
Today, we're launching an investigation, really digging into the serious and frankly often overlooked issue of liability for firearms instructors. It's a responsibility that can linger long after the last round is fired.
And we're diving deep into Valortech's extensive training materials here. We're focusing on what they reveal about the legal tightrope firearms instructors walk, especially concerning vicarious liability.
Vicarious liability.
Yeah, the idea that they could actually be held accountable for the actions of their former students. This isn't just about the mechanics of shooting, you know.
No.
It's about the potential legal storm that can brew if that knowledge, that training, somehow leads to harm down the line.
Yeah. Okay, so let's maybe lay the groundwork first. When we talk about legally teaching someone how to use a firearm, what are the fundamental principles? It's got to be more complex than just showing someone the proper grip, right?
Oh, absolutely. Far more complex. In Florida, for instance, Chapter 493 of the Florida statutes is really a key piece of this whole puzzle.
Okay.
You can think of it as the foundational rule book for firearms training within the state. It directly dictates who can instruct, what qualifications they need, which leads us straight to the Class K instructor license.
So Class K.
Exactly. That's required for those training individuals for a Class G license, the security officer license.
Yeah.
And keeping this license isn't just a one-and-done thing. Instructors have ongoing annual obligations.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to stay current, make sure they're up to date with, the evolving legal landscape.
And these obligations, they aren't just suggestions, I assume. What specific training are these instructors themselves mandated to take?
No, they're definite requirements.
Yep.
And they're quite detailed. Instructors must show a high level of skill in safe firearm handling, obviously. But also, they need a comprehensive understanding of liability.
Their own liability?
Yes, but also the potential liability their students might face. And crucially, they need a thorough grasp of the lawful use of force.
Right. The legalities?
Precisely. The Florida Administrative Code, specifically Rule 5N-1.132, goes even further. It spells out the curriculum and training standards they absolutely must follow. And we can't forget the broader federal context either. You've got laws like the Gun Control Act, OSHA regulations. These impact everything from how training is conducted to the safety of the range itself.
So the onus, the responsibility, is clearly on the instructor to provide, quote, proper training. But what does proper really mean when you think about the possibility that a student might misuse that training months or even years later?
That's the core issue. The duty of care is paramount here. Instructors have this ethical responsibility, really, to make sure their students get not just the physical skills, how to handle the firearm, but also the significant consequences that can come from their actions with that firearm. This means a deep understanding of the legal and ethical lines around using force. The goal is always to equip students with the knowledge and judgment to prevent misuse.
Okay, now let's move into the heart of our investigation here.
Yeah.
Liability. You mentioned direct liability. That seems, well, relatively clear-cut. The instructor's own actions cause harm.
Right.
But this idea of vicarious liability, that an instructor could be responsible for someone else's actions, that's where things seem to get, well, murky. Can you maybe shed some light on that distinction?
Yeah, let's break that down. So direct liability happens when an instructor's own negligence or mistakes directly lead to harm or a legal problem. So imagine an instructor who certifies a student who clearly, demonstrably can't handle a firearm safely, or maybe one who makes critical errors during a training drill. And that then leads to a student having a negligent discharge later.
Right, I can see that.
Even giving clearly wrong information about when you can legally use force that could fall under direct liability. In those cases, the instructor's actions have a direct negative legal consequence. It's pretty straightforward.
That makes sense. Their own errors lead to problems. But how on earth can an instructor be held accountable for something a student does after the training is completely finished? That just feels like a huge extension of responsibility.
It is significant, and that's the absolute crux of vicarious liability.
Yeah.
Here, the instructor, or sometimes the training organization itself, can be held legally responsible for students' actions, even long after they've left the classroom or the range.
Wow.
This often comes up when a student misuses a firearm, and then the argument is made that this misuse was actually a foreseeable result of inadequate training or maybe a negligent assessment by that instructor?
Foreseeable.
Okay.
Yeah.
If the instruction was substandard, corners were cut, maybe key safety aspects weren't drilled enough, and as a direct result, a student acts negligently or unlawfully with their gun, well, the instructor or the school could face serious legal trouble.
So the quality of the training isn't just about passing a test. It has these long-term potential legal echoes.
Exactly. It's kind of eye-opening, isn't it? Instructors are focused on immediate safety on the range, as they should be, but the legal system might look back and hold them accountable for the long-term judgment their students exercise based on that training. It makes the quality of instruction this surprisingly enduring responsibility.
That is. Yeah, that's a chilling thought. It really underscores that picking a firearms instructor isn't just about finding someone convenient or cheap. It carries potential legal weight much later on.
Absolutely.
So how critical then is the evaluation process? It sounds like just, ticking boxes on a form isn't nearly enough.
It's fundamental, absolutely fundamental. Rigorous evaluation is the bedrock of responsible firearms instruction, and honestly, it's a primary defense against future liability claims.
How so? What does rigorous look like?
Well, instructors need to thoroughly assess competence through practical, hands-on exercises. We're talking live fire drills designed to really test proficiency under stress, realistic scenario-based evaluations that check decision-making.
Like shoot, don't shoot scenarios.
Exactly. Those are critical.
Yeah.
And alongside that, you need comprehensive written exams. These confirm the student actually understands the relevant laws and the core principles of safe firearm handling. It's a combination.
So it's not just about hitting the paper, it's about showing good judgment, understanding the legal side of things.
Precisely.
And what about the flip side, the ethical obligation to maybe not certify someone, to fail them?
That carries enormous ethical weight. Failing a student who genuinely doesn't meet the required standards, even if it's an awkward or uncomfortable conversation, it's paramount. It has to be done.
Why paramount?
Because certifying someone who isn't truly qualified, who maybe hasn't demonstrated safe handling or sound judgment consistently, well, that doesn't just potentially jeopardize public safety. It directly ramps up the instructor's own potential for liability down the road.
Okay.
And this is where meticulous record-keeping comes in. Documenting a student's performance, their struggles, the remediation efforts, the final assessment that becomes a crucial legal safeguard if questions arise later. Negligent certification is a serious issue.
Negligent certification, where an unqualified person gets passed.
Exactly. And if that student then goes on to cause harm with a firearm, you can bet the training and certification process will come under intense scrutiny.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly to navigate the particularly sensitive area of the use of force. The legalities around this are complex. They vary by state. What's the instructor's responsibility in making sure students truly grasp these boundaries?
It's a profound responsibility. Instructors absolutely have to clearly articulate the legal framework for justified use of force in their specific jurisdiction. So here in Florida, that includes the statutes on self-defense, defense of others, defense of property.
And things like the reasonable person standard?
Yes, explaining core concepts like the reasonable person standard is vital. What would a typical cautious person do in the same situation? And of course, explaining the specifics of laws like Florida's Stand Your Ground law is absolutely critical. Students need to understand its implications fully.
Not just the letter of the law, but how it applies.
Right. And beyond the pure legal definitions, instructors must delve into the ethical side of using force. Emphasizing principles like proportionality is the level of force appropriate to the threat, and the crucial importance of de-escalation whenever possible, avoiding the use of force if you can safely do so.
So it's legal knowledge, ethical considerations, judgment calls.
All intertwined. Think about that reasonable person standard again. If a student uses deadly force in a situation where, most reasonable people would clearly have had a safe path to retreat, questions are definitely going to be asked about their training and their understanding of appropriate force.
Right. Beyond the crucial legal and ethical knowledge, what about the practical side? What tangible steps can instructors take to build what you called earlier a fortress of safety protocols?
Well, strict and just unwavering adherence to safety protocols during all aspects of training is non-negotiable. That covers live fire exercises on the range, but also dry fire practice in the classroom. No exceptions.
Consistency is key.
Absolutely. This also includes having crystal clear emergency response procedures. What happens if there's an accident during training? Everyone needs to know the plan instantly.
Okay.
And perhaps even more vital in the long run is the instructor's role in really instilling safe handling practices that students carry with them beyond the training environment.
Like what?
Things like proper, secure firearm storage at home, a thorough understanding of the legal requirements for carrying a concealed weapon, if applicable, and hammering home those fundamental, universal firearm safety rules.
The core rules.
Yes, treat every firearm as if it's loaded. Never point the muzzle at anything you are not willing to destroy. Keep your finger off the trigger until your sights are on the target and you actually decided to shoot. And always be certain of your target and what lies beyond it. These have to be emphasized constantly, reinforced until they're automatic.
This all just underscores the immense gravity of the instructor's role. But to bring this into even sharper focus, are there real-world examples, documented cases maybe, that illustrate these potential legal pitfalls for instructors?
Yes, definitely. And looking at these cases offers really invaluable, sometimes harsh lessons. Consider Popow v. City of Margate. Now, this involved a police officer, but the core lesson applies to all firearms instructors.
Which was
the critical importance of providing training that's adequate for foreseeable real-world scenarios. Not just target practice, but situations officers or even civilians might actually encounter.
okay, real-world relevance.
Exactly. Then there's Zuckel v. City and County of Denver. This case really highlighted the need for comprehensive judgmental training, those crucial shoot, don't shoot scenarios we talked about, testing decision-making under pressure.
Right.
We've also seen instances, perhaps less famous but still important, like the Michigan firearms instructor involved in a negligent discharge during training. A stark reminder about always adhering to basic safety protocols, even as the instructor. Complacency is dangerous.
Even for the experts.
Especially for the experts sometimes.
Yeah.
And the case of Young v. City of Providence reinforces the need for realistic scenario-based training and also the importance of ongoing professional development for anyone carrying a firearm, particularly law enforcement.
So what's the common thread in these cases?
The thread is that inadequate training, a failure to really prepare students for the complexities and pressures of real-world encounters, can have severe legal consequences.
Oh.
Not just for the individual student, but potentially tracing back to the instructor or the training organization.
All of this really highlights the significant responsibility on instructors' shoulders. Given all this complexity and potential liability, Valortech, in its materials, emphasizes seeking out a specific type of instructor, a state-licensed law enforcement firearms instructor. Why that particular distinction? What makes it so crucial?
Well, engaging a state-licensed law enforcement firearms instructor brings some distinct advantages, especially when you're thinking about these complex liability issues.
How so?
For one, these instructors undergo really rigorous legal and practical training as just a standard part of their law enforcement duties. It's embedded in their profession.
Okay.
So they typically possess a very in-depth understanding of the legal limits on using firearms, self-defense laws, safe handling practices, because they operate under those rules daily.
It's not just academic for them.
Exactly. Furthermore, they're bound by strict legal and ethical standards inherent to their job. And critically, their training curricula are usually regularly updated to reflect the absolute latest laws, court decisions, and best practices in tactics and safety.
So they're likely current?
Very likely current. And this elevated level of documented expertise, this adherence to established legal standards, well, it lends significant credibility. Yes, heaven forbid, legal proceedings ever arise related to the training. It demonstrates the training received was comprehensive, legally sound, and aligned with recognized best practices.
Is there a specific statute on that?
Yes. Chapter 790 of the 2023 Florida statutes actually further clarifies training standards and instructor certification requirements specifically for law enforcement, underscoring that state-recognized standard.
Okay. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the, frankly, sobering world of instructor liability, what are the really critical takeaways? What should our listeners absolutely remember from this?
I think the fundamental insight is just understanding the profound legal responsibility that firearms instructors carry.
Yeah.
It's immense. They face potential liability both directly for their own mistakes
Right.
and, perhaps more surprisingly for many, vicariously for their students' actions, if negligence in their training or how they evaluated that student can be proven.
So the link has to be established.
Yes, the link is key. But the potential is there, which means rigorous training methods, meticulous student evaluation, and just an unwavering, constant commitment to safety protocols and legal frameworks are absolutely essential. They're not optional. They're necessary to mitigate these inherent risks.
And the choice of instructor matters.
Absolutely. Opting for training from qualified state-licensed law enforcement instructors, as Valortech suggests, offers probably the most thorough and legally defensible preparation available. It provides a greater degree of protection, really, for both the instructor and for the individual getting trained.
It certainly makes you think about the profound responsibility that comes with firearms training. A responsibility that, as you said, extends way beyond the range and rests not just with the instructor, but really with every single individual who chooses to handle a firearm.
Mhm.
What are the long-term implications of ensuring we have the absolute highest standards in this critical field? For individual safety, yes, but also for the broader well-being of our communities. It's definitely a question that demands some careful thought.
It really does.
And for those listening who want to explore the specific legal foundations we touched on today, we definitely encourage you to delve into those referenced Florida statutes. Take a look for yourself. Thank you for joining us on this important deep dive.